What's going on, beautiful people? This is Expected Jason's podcast, and I'm your host, John. On this episode, I want to talk about emotions. Again, we've got Dave back, third time's the charm.
What's going on?
So, I've been thinking about this episode quite a lot, and obviously, as always, it's going to be from my perspective and Dave's perspective on this one. But emotions are something that I've kind of struggled with my whole life. Like, I briefly touched on it before with, like, when I was growing up, I had really bad eczema. And anytime I got emotional and things got out of hand, my eczema would flare up.
Okay, cool. I was trying to figure out where the hell that was connecting to emotion.
Yes. Don't worry, things connect. So, when I was really young, I kind of heavily linked the two. Anytime my emotions got out of hand, literally, my body reacted negatively. So I shut out emotions. I pushed them all down and thought it's better not to feel them, and that way they can't hurt me. But that makes life very stale. And, like, but you knew me, obviously, the one to break through the floodgates of my emotions was obviously becoming a dad, like having my daughter. And it weren't until that was broken down, and obviously you knew me before and after then. So you probably see yourself that kind of change from where I was more kind of Mad Max, let the world go to hell, I'll survive regardless, to being more kind of empathetic to what's going on in the world, being more empathetic to what's going on with others, and more what's going on in myself. And trying to actually, like, deal with those emotions rather than just push them away and focus on something else.
Yeah, there's definitely a bit of a switch with yourself.
But I think, like, that journey of kind of understanding yourself and understanding your emotions, like, again, the suppressing them was an overcorrection.
Yeah.
And then when they come back again, it's again an overcorrection. And you find yourself clinging on to the little things that give you joy or the positive emotions. But when it comes to emotions, you've got to experience the full spectrum, no?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you have to experience them all to understand what they even are. And even then, it's about trying to find a balance, isn't it? Especially in the world we live in at the moment, where it's probably overbearingly negative more so than positive. So actually just trying to function day to day is quite tough, especially if you can't recognize what you're actually feeling. And I think that's something that just gets more and more complex as you get older. You know, when you're young, you know it from being a dad, right? You see your own kid, the emotions are pretty linear.
But then you see little things, like when they're overtired, they're far more emotional. That don't go away when you grow up.
No, but the emotions at that age are still very linear, right? So
yeah.
If I'm overtired, I'm frustrated, or I'm sad. If I'm hungry, I'm frustrated. But if I'm playing around, I'm very happy. That's not me dulling it down. I'm not saying that babies are like super one directional, but when you get older, it becomes even more complicated, right? Because
I don't know.
you have emotions which are emotions, right? You can name them and they are what they are. You're angry, you're sad, you're frustrated, you're happy, you're excited. Like, but there's things that complicate them more and more as you get older, right? So think about day-to-day life for most people listening and ourselves, right? It's a roller coaster. You can wake up pretty pumped and, hey man, it's another day, I'm blessed. But then within 5 minutes, that could just be switched out for just pure anger because something's annoyed you already. You know what I mean? And it's like the different factors that could affect what you're feeling. It's also like the fact that you could just be feeling pretty down and you have no idea why. Just no idea what you're feeling. You know what I mean? It's the balance is really hard, I think.
But this is the thing, and that's the kind of big takeaway for me anyway from suppressing them is you're never going to realise that if you push them down and ignore them. You're never going to find out how you work and what makes you tick if you ignore it and if you push it all down and you don't actually, like, give it time to percolate and kind of feel those emotions and understand them. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you always rush to just, like, suppress everything and push it down, when do you actually stop and kind of feel it and actually let it resonate? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, you don't. it's really difficult to navigate. And that's for sure.
But I think the kind of big thing with it is like you've got to deal with your emotions regardless of what's going on in the rest of life. Like, and I think that's obviously there's going to be many differences between being a kid and being an adult dealing with your emotions. But when you're a kid, all you have to deal with is your emotions. Like somebody else takes care of everything else. Somebody else pays your bills, puts the meals on the tables, and everything else.
Yeah, but I think there's a certain part of childhood where you learn how to suppress your emotions, right? And I think that's where things start for a lot of people, is that when you don't deal with emotions, at least from my experience, they become scars.
I hear that. And
they become scars that don't actually heal. So when you actually look at that from a biological standpoint, what's a scar that hasn't healed? It's a wound. It's still open, right? So there's a lot of things I think that we all suppress through childhood. Things happen, man. You get the best parents in the world, there's still things that happen. It's just the way of the world. But if it doesn't get dealt with, it lingers. And it may linger subconsciously. So you don't actually realize that you're still carrying a lot of stuff, man. And I think, like, as you get older, the one thing I've learned is the importance of actually just dealing with it as you feel it. Like, especially as a bloke. Like, I'm not putting anyone down, don't get me wrong. We all feel. But anyone will know there's a big stigma with males and mental health. And I think a large part of that comes from that, is that we get used to suppressing but don't know how to deal with it.
I think as well that, like, to kind of build off that, a lot of men are expected to suppress it or not feel it. Like, literally, the saying "man up."
100%, man.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
any dude out there that's got a really close male friend, if they saw them crying, they wouldn't know what to do with themselves.
Yeah, if I walked up to you and you was bawling your eyes,
I'd be confused as hell.
To be quite frank, the first thing I'd probably do is tell you, shut up. Like, and that's me being honest.
I mean, let's be fair, out of us two, I'm the one more likely to be walking and crying. But the day that ever happened, I saw you actually cry, I'd be very confused.
And I think that's the thing. Like, I've kind of seen stories of, like, when people see their dad cry and things like that. Like, that's a glass shattering moment for them. Do you know what I mean? Like, because for most people, their dad's their hero. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I guess it goes down to stereotypes, right? As much as the world is changing and evolving, and people probably have more freedom to be what and who they want to be, there's still stereotypes that are attached. And, like, I guess a few men in the world would probably assume or feel that the stereotype of a man is strength. And I think that stems from your father, right? Because your father's job, as you well know, is to be strong. Like, you need to be the supportive one, right?
But do you know what, though? Like, I think what a lot of people don't see is the moments, for example, like when a dad comes home from a hard day's work and he's stressed out and everything else, and those few minutes that he just sits in his car, engine off, before going into the house, just trying to compose himself, just so he can be strong enough to put on a brave face for his family. Like, people don't see those moments where you catch your breath and you're down on one knee and you just need 5 seconds before you can be their hero again. Like, I think the fact that people don't see that means people don't acknowledge it. And because people don't acknowledge it, they think it doesn't happen. Do you know what I mean? So then when somebody is down and they do stumble in on their dad crying, it is such a WTF moment. Because that's not meant to happen. Dad doesn't break. Do you know what I mean? But the truth is, Dad does break. He just doesn't let you see it. And that's the truth for so many people. That they have weaknesses, yes, but they don't let people see their weaknesses. So therefore, people assume they have none.
Yeah, 100%. Like, perspective, you put that in perspective for anyone.
But then that's got the back end on it, though.
No, but my point is, like, the perspective from us is going to be male dominant because we are men, so we don't know it any other way, right? Yeah,
but when we're talking about emotions, obviously you've got to kind of acknowledge
that also carries over to pretty much anyone.
Yeah.
Like, I was raised by my mum for multiple years now, and I'm sure there were many moments where she let it go but didn't let me see it. Because that defines a lot of things to a child.
Yeah.
You know, if you see that regularly, something isn't right. But when you get older, you realize that life makes you want to cry quite a lot, man. You know what I mean? Like, there's things that happen that are out of your control.
It's simply that form of expression. Do you know what I mean? Like, sometimes that's how you need to express. Like, sometimes you need to scream, you need to shout, like, you need to let it out. Do you know what I mean? And always suppressing it and not feeling the emotions isn't the answer. But I think that's why I wanted to do this episode, because like, I think somebody just needs to put it out there that it's okay to feel the emotions.
100%.
Like, if anything, it's more a negative to suppress them. You're only doing a disservice to yourself.
It's a complete negative to suppress them. It's, let's be fair, it's a terrible habit.
I will say on that thing, there is a time and a place.
Of course. But
do you know
overall,
what I mean? Like,
it's a bad habit.
Yeah.
Overall, in my eyes, it's a lose-lose.
I hear that.
There's nothing to gain from it. Now, I know there's going to be scenarios and context. There's context and scenarios for everything in the world. Not everyone's going to have a support outlet. It's like not everyone's going to be lucky enough to have someone super close to them that they can call and say, I ain't feeling good, man. Like, you got 5 minutes. Like, it's a very fortunate thing to have. We both have very small circles for a reason. But you know, within that circle, there is someone who's going to pick up that phone.
Yeah.
If it really is that bad, someone will pick up that phone. You know what I mean? And but for me, you got to let things out, man.
The thing is, though, I think that kind of ties into it, is like having that small circle, and the beauty of that small circle is you can be vulnerable. Like, I'm not somebody that cries or whatever else really, but if I was to cry and I knew that I needed to go to some people, I know the first 5 people that would come to mind would never turn me away. And that's valuable. Do you know what I mean? Like, not everybody has that. Some people really are completely alone. Do you know what I mean? Or they feel as if they're completely alone. And it's just kind of having a voice out there to say that it's okay to feel however you're feeling at the moment. Do you know what I mean? Like, at the end of the day, there's going to be a reason that you're feeling however you are. Do you know what I mean? Like, you've got to learn something, understand something, or go through something. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's going to be very unlikely that you feel something for no apparent reason. Do you know what I mean? So it's just about having the self-awareness to figure out the reason and understand your emotions and their triggers.
Yeah, it's the cliche of mixed emotions, right? Every teenager's been through that. What's up? I've got mixed emotions. It was my special.
But that's the thing. I think that's more just a lack of understanding. Do you know what I mean? Like,
there's usually something being masked up, and I find when you feel like that, there's normally an emotion that you can't quite put your finger on. You feel a little sad, but you don't know why. That's normally because there's another thing attached to it. And it could just be that, actually, I just feel quite alone right now. Like, my mates are busy or whatever, or I don't feel like I can go chat to someone. That normally was my age. Like, I felt like I wanted to go do something, but I couldn't. But
that's the thing. Sometimes even just being honest with yourself and just admitting that I'm a little bit lonely, like, that's hard. And sometimes it takes a lot to get to that point where you're willing to admit that you're not okay. Like, I've been there myself, do you know what I mean? Like, at times I'm still there, like, I'm juggling a hectic schedule. Like, you go from going 100 miles an hour to absolute nothing, and then you're just like, oh, I'm lonely, I'm this, I'm bored, I'm that, I'm this. And it seems overbearing because you're not used to it.
Yeah, man, like, I had that, man. Like, as you all know, like, I haven't been single much of my adult life. But the times where I was, that was definitely the thing. But I just didn't realize it at the time because it was such a new feeling. And I couldn't identify it. But looking back, I know it was that. And that's the impulse that drives a lot of things, like a lot of decisions that you make. Is that constant yearning to be talking to someone or doing something with someone.
Do you know?
That don't just necessarily mean romantically, by the way. That means in general. Like, there's that social itch that
humans love companionship.
Most. Some people are so introverted that they are good with themselves, man.
But it kind of gets onto that thing of, I've lost it. I had it a second ago.
You lost it a long time ago, mate.
Oh, I never had it. I never had it. But, like, it's always going to come back to that thing of just self-reflection and trying to understand your emotions and kind of, again, like, different things are going to trigger your emotions. Different things are going to trigger you, and you're going to respond at varying times. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you ask me something when I'm hungry or tired compared to when my belly's full and I'm well rested,
bite your damn head off.
You're going to get a completely different person. But I understand that enough to have the self-awareness in those situations. Do you know what I mean? Like, okay, cool, I need to eat, or I need to apologize because I know I'm going to be short, or whatever it is. Like, taking the time to understand your emotions and understand yourself, there is a lot of value in that. And just being able to kind of sit with yourself, and this is the topic that I kind of lost, is like to be able to sit in silence with absolutely nothing is very hard these days. I mean, it is for me. I tried to sit for like 5 minutes on my own, just in complete dead silence. And it's hard because all of a sudden it's like when everything goes quiet in a noisy room and you can hear the clock ticking. And now you're aware of the clock ticking.
Yeah.
But that's okay sometimes. Sometimes you need to be aware of that. Sometimes you need to hear your heart beat. Like, when was the last time you felt your pulse go through your body? Felt the air go into your lungs? Like, genuinely, like, experienced the moment. Do you know what I mean? Like, compared to being bombarded and distracted by everything else. So if you're constantly distracted from your emotions and you're constantly pulled here, there and everywhere else, like, no wonder when you do kind of get that quiet, it's such a flood and it's so overwhelming because you're not used to hearing it at all.
No, life is full of stimulus.
So this
pretty
is
much
thing.
Everything you do is a stimulus. And you think of like a typical day, when are you most likely to be on your own? It's still probably got a stimulus. So I think for myself, normally
you look
when
to
I'm
fill
driving,
that time. That's when you want you time. I want to de-stress or do something.
so like if I'm driving to work, I'm truly alone. But I will be listening to something.
Do you know what? I used to have a friend that never listened to the radio. He would literally just drive in complete silence and listen to the sound of the engine. And it bugged the life out of me.
Was he driving like an 05 plate or something?
No. He was driving a transit van.
Old though, isn't it?
Yeah, old diesel transit van.
He couldn't put the radio on because he needs to hear what the engine's saying.
Like half the time he was running on fumes, not gonna lie.
That's what I'm saying. There's a reason he still got stimulus, and the stimulus was, am I going to make it home today?
I swear, I love that guy to bits, yeah, but he was either like abundance or nothing. Do you know what I mean?
Is
Like,
it the same guy where you slipped off the motorway and turned the key off to let it roll down the hill?
Yeah. Same.
Yeah, he has stimulus, bro.
Same
Don't
guy
let it fool you. There's no pure silence. That's not a 23 plate Merc that's running top of the line. I can afford to listen to the silence. He's running a health check on that engine.
Same guy, when we went to pick up my ped, like years and years ago, we reversed up the motorway on the hard shoulder because we missed the turn-in to, like, we drove like 30, 40 miles or whatever it was to go get this bike. And he missed the turn-in. It was like 16 miles or whatever it was to the next frigging thing. So he was like hard shoulder, hazards on, reversing in a transit van up the motorway. Yeah, that guy was nuts. Anyway, enough of that tangent. But like, to actually like sit with yourself in silence and be present, like, it's rare to do that, and it's like when,
especially without any stimulus, it's incredibly tough.
Well, yeah, that's the whole point, is to like just sit with yourself.
Yeah, if you sit at home and you have your time, you are probably watching something. You are probably catching up on some sport, or you are watching YouTube, or various other streaming things. Like, you're probably doing something, and whilst you're doing that, you're probably looking at your phone simultaneously because one stimulus isn't enough. Yeah, I'm guilty of that.
Yeah, I've had like 3 or 4 screens in front of me
100%.
at once, using every single one of them.
We're now in a day and age where the art of having no stimulus is a discipline. Like,
realistically, a lot of the time it feels like my only limit to how much I can do is how many limbs I have. Like, give me another 2 arms and I'll operate more devices, it's fine. Like,
it's a good point though, because when I think about the amount of times like I haven't felt great, I guarantee that if I actually went out for a walk with like no headphones, no nothing, and literally just went for like a 1 to 2 mile walk, I would have felt a ton better. But
then if you actually dissect that, and it's, okay, let's ask yourself why. Because you're not distracted, so you'd actually sit with the thoughts, think through your problems, and deal with it.
Think about it. You have a stimulus, but it's not a mentally taxing stimulus. Most people, hopefully, can walk fairly easy, right? Unless you're very unlucky, I understand that. But most of us can probably walk fairly comfortably. If you do a 1-2 mile walk, your heart rate's not going to get too accelerated. So you're going to be pretty comfortable, right? So mentally, you don't have a stimulus. You have a physical one, which I also think is a good thing. I think that helps the mental side of things, because you know that you're just walking, man. You're just going to chill. Right?
I mean, look.
So your brain has no choice. It wants to focus on the walk, but whilst it's focusing on the walk, for your brain, that's quite an easy task. Okay, one step, don't fall over, right? A lot easier when you're sober. So your brain is going to just go, oh, cool, let's run away with things.
But think of things like when we used to work security, yeah? Like I'd easily walk miles and miles every night. You'd walk God knows how much or whatever, but...
Not much.
Well,
I got the lucky draw out of that one.
yeah, sorry. But I would definitely walk like God knows how much anyway. But when I think about it, when I think about times when like things were really rough and I really had to process stuff, that's when I was doing my most walking, when I was constantly like just letting the cogs turn. And whether I was listening to music or whatever at the time, like my goal was to process through my thoughts and everything else was just background noise. I was walking down by the canal a lot and literally just walking through my problems. Do you know what I mean? Like, and actually taking that time to sit in them and figure them out, opposed to distracting yourself from them with one form of media or the other. Like, I think that's the important part, is to actually sit with your emotions. Don't bat them away. Don't suppress them. Don't feel that they're disingenuine or they're there for no valid reason. Like, there's a reason you feel everything that you feel. Like, if your stomach's feeling off, you've probably eaten something wrong or you've got a bug, or like, there's a reason for it. It's not just your stomach's trying to be annoying. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's always cause and effect, and it's being aware of that cause and effect emotionally and mentally. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Like, you need to talk yourself through it. And I have this kind of blessing, but also the curse that I have a very logical and emotional brain. That's my father's side. Like, I can very easily override an emotion with logic, but I can also very easily override logic with an emotion. But sometimes they work really well, because you're going to kind of ask yourself the questions. Okay, well, I feel like this. Why? How? What's caused it?
Yeah, I'd say I'm
Where's
far
this
more
come
logical.
from? You know what I mean? Like, but even then, you can process what's going on. Like you said, with cause and effect, right? Like, I'm feeling kind of annoyed. Why?
Yeah. And I think
if you can't think of a why, you're going to start going into the how or the where or the what, because something somewhere has annoyed you.
Yeah, there's a reason.
And it's now lingering. And then you kind of get into that, well, why is it lingering? Well, this is why. Because things have been annoying me recently. Things have been going wrong recently. Do you know what? I'm not eating right. Or I'm not moving. Whatever. There's a trigger. You need to figure that trigger out. Like, at the end of the day, you need to open that can sometimes, man. Like, it's just a healthy thing to do. Ideally, yes, if you have someone you can bounce things off of, that's amazing. But not everyone has that luxury. I get that.
I think the thing...
But you just need to stop your ass bouncing off the walls, to put it bluntly.
I think the big kind of takeaway is that it's not going to be pleasant opening that can.
No.
But it's necessary for yourself, for personal development, for life development, and for everybody around you. Like, deal with your business. Do you know what I mean? Like,
anyone here of a relatively decent age will have just survived the lockdown, or 4. You would have learned a lot about yourself during that.
Yeah.
Because you would have had a lot of periods of isolation, point blank.
But there's a massive reason why people struggled with that, though, I think, is because people weren't used to being alone. We're societal creatures.
It crippled me, man. First one, I lost my damn mind. Fully lost my mind. And that's when I realized that working is actually like a really big thing for me. To actually go to do my job is a massive, massive thing for me, which I never ever realized before at that point, is that routine is an important structure.
The thing is, though, like, yeah, but it also ties a lot into identity. So, like, for example, if somebody doesn't go to work and their work job's 40 hours of their week, now all of a sudden that's 40 hours of not knowing who they are.
Yeah,
plus in travel time, and they're up to 50, 60 hours of being lost in that week.
Yeah, you realize, like, the one big idea for me, which is being a workhorse, was gone. I couldn't do it anymore. And I didn't use my brain to replace it with something healthy.
The thing is, I think that's such an important thing, is to ask yourself, what are you when everything is stripped away? Because everything's always up, everything's always chaotic. But at the end of it, when everything's all said and done, everything can go away in an instant. So what's left when it all goes away? And this is the thing. If all that's left is you, but you've been neglecting you for the pursuit of everything else, and now you is all that you're left with, what was all that effort for?
100%. Like, The thing that works for me is just trying to find balance. Most things come back to that.
Yeah.
There needs to be a balance within your body and within what you're doing. Like, you need to have that social element. A lot of people will. If you're more of an extrovert or what they would call an ambivert, someone who's a bit of both, you need some kind of social element in your life. But at the same time, you need some you time. Like, you need downtime. Like, think of yourself like one big computer, man. The one thing it needs now and then is to be powered down.
The thing is, just to build off that, because like I'm fairly introverted, but I have my times when I'm charged up, when I'm full of energy.
You're an ambivert.
I can be extrovert.
That's what it's called an ambivert. An ambivert is someone who has both sides.
Yeah,
I
but
forgot the word. Intro and extrovert. That's it.
Yeah.
You have kind of both. So like, as much as like an extrovert always wants to do something, right? Hey, I'm traveling here, my God. And an introvert's just like, leave me alone with my keyboard, man. I don't want to be touched.
Yeah, see,
An ambivert can swing in and out of those. Like, I know that. Like, last weekend I went out, it was great. I had a great time. Next day, leave me alone.
like, the thing is, I'm probably more like 80-20, like 80% introvert, 20% extrovert.
Social battery theory,
like, yeah, but again, like, that's part of kind of understanding yourself in that. And it's, again, like, there's going to be loads of different things, like different triggers that come with being introvert or extrovert. And again, the more you can understand that and understand your triggers and how you react to it, the better you can have, the better experience you can have. So it's just taking that time to understand yourself and actually sit with your emotions for a change rather than being distracted by everything. But I think that's a good point to wrap this one up. The seed for this episode is going to be, take some time to sit with your emotions. Sit in silence for 5-10 minutes. Like, actually run a systems check on yourself. Ask yourself if you're okay and if you need anything. Listen to yourself. Your body knows what it needs if you listen.
Be the best version of yourself for yourself.
That's beautiful. But I think it's one of those ones where it's, to get there, you have to understand yourself. You're never going to get to the best version of you without understanding and taking the time to figure out you.
Yeah, well said.
Do you get what I mean?
I do.
Anyway, all the best, and I'll catch you on the next one.